So next on our agenda is the Greater Cincinnati Energy Alliance. Andy Holzhauser and Chris Jones. You have a PowerPoint or?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can, and you may have.
Do we want to take, we'll take a brief recess to allow you to get that up on the screen.
I think it's.
Okay, recess is over. Very good.
If the rest of what we talk about is that easy, we'll be in good shape. Well, thanks for having us back to the commissioners, and we've enjoyed our visits previously. We've talked about a little bit of an overview of our organization in the past. We've spent a little bit of a deeper dive in prior meetings on some of the residential energy efficiency work, and so today we're here to share more about the emergence and the evolution of a commercial financing project and effort that we call PACE. And it is, I think, the personification of a public-private financing partnership. It's an economic development financing tool that we're spending a good deal of our time as an economic development agency supporting the region's efforts, and look forward to giving you a little bit more of a deeper dive. This is a follow-up to prior conversations we've had with Commissioner Ubel and others, and certainly want to be able to have a program like this to make as big of an impact in the market as possible. And among those in Claremont County that I think are already looking to kind of lead by example, I think is at least part of the reason why Jeremy Chapman's also here from Malink out in Union Township, actively looking at a mechanism like this for some additional clean energy investment on their facility. So the first handful, 7-8 slides that you have is the overview and the background on our organization, since we have presented that in the past, and I want to be sensitive to time. You have it in your packet, but I'll just summarize those 8 slides by indicating that we're a 6-year-old nonprofit economic development agency. We manage residential and commercial clean energy programs. We've driven about $42 million of projects in those sectors to date, and operating throughout Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky. And as we evolve and work hard to make sure that there's a maximum number of private sector investment opportunities in our region, PACE financing has emerged. So with that said, we can jump right to slide 8 and just give a little bit of an overview of PACE. PACE comes to Ohio from 5-year-old state legislation. Ohio is one of 30 states that have passed this related legislation, but in Ohio, unlike like many states, it actually just took the 100-year-old financing mechanism of special assessments, or in Ohio, as we call them, special improvement districts, and we add an E to the SID, which represents an energy special improvement district. So in other words, it provides, through an existing public service, being the special assessment process, an ability for private PACE investors through bond issuances to finance private commercial building energy efficiency and renewable energy upgrades. So that's that personification of a public-private partnership. And part of what our organization does is makes that process consistent and streamlined and simple, first at no cost to the host jurisdiction, but secondly in an efficient way to enable the private sector to embrace and invest in the space. And so we have a couple of the key points of what PACE is up there on the board. As we think about what we all know special assessments to be that finance sewer improvements and tree improvements and facade improvements and other things like that, one of the key differences when we create an energy special improvement district is that it's a purely voluntary mechanism. So it is a single commercial or industrial building in a particular jurisdiction that would go to the host jurisdiction and say, I want to finance $1 million of energy improvements on my facility. I'm responsible for going out and bringing private investors to the table. And by virtue of that, when the local jurisdiction agrees to create that Union Township, for example, Energy Special Improvement District, Inc., that's the legislative piece of this at the local jurisdiction level. There is, of course, no cost to the jurisdiction to be able to do that. But creating that legal entity then creates that mechanism to bring the private capital to the table. So it does not, create a district in which you sort of draw a geographic line and, one building says they want to do it, but all the other buildings in that jurisdiction have to fall into it. It is not that at all, and it can also be non-contiguous. So, Malink could do it tomorrow, and a couple years later or months later, Jungle Gyms could do it, and they're in the same district. It doesn't impact any of the other commercial or industrial buildings in that jurisdiction, but yet does give those private buildings an opportunity to access capital through this mechanism.
Andy, we talked about it, but these districts are approved by the trustees or the commissioners in that county.
So what it would be through the township trustees for the legislative piece, and at the same time, one of the reasons why we're here today and why we've felt like it's been very beneficial to engage with a lot of folks at the county level is not only from the standpoint of making sure we're meeting with all the developers and businesses that can benefit from this, but as well, I think our experience has shown that when we go to a township, for example, and we start to engage them through this education process, I think we're already seeing a lot of times that they'll go back to the county to look to the county to say, are you familiar with this? Are you aware of this? Has anyone else in the county done this before? And so what we ultimately offer for consideration today is the county to consider a resolution that says simply that the county supports the concept of PACE financing for the benefit of private commercial building owners within the county, but at the end of the day, the legislative pieces of it fall within that local jurisdiction. And so I think that covers much of that first slide. The second slide just gives you an illustration of what I've already indicated as one of the key differences from what we all know special improvements districts to be historically. So because the state has already formulated that legislation, it then is an open market for local legislations to adopt it. There's both the national precedent that I alluded to, and then there are about 4 or 5 existing special improvement districts within the state of Ohio, one of which within Southwest Ohio is inside of the city of Cincinnati, and that's one that we've established with a completed project there. So the point is there that this process has been done. All these legal documents are now templates that can be reused over time as this grows. That brings the costs to administer this down, which makes it more beneficial for the private sector.
Referring to private sector, we're talking, maybe you said it, corporate or residential or both?
It's any non-residential building over 4 units, and so it could even be a multifamily building over 4 units, over to office, multi-tenant buildings, to malls and shopping centers, to industrial facilities, and in most of those sectors, we actually have a project or an active conversation within the county through some introductions that Andy and others have made for us to start to get this out there and inform business owners that this is a unique financing mechanism that could help them make some investment in their own building that ultimately reduces their energy bills. And nonprofits as well. Thank you, Chris. We definitely focus among many of our areas of outreach on the nonprofit sector, which is uniquely positioned to benefit from this financing mechanism.
So your improvement districts are by township?
It is by, yeah, it would be by township.
So if there was a business in a township who did not, approve legislation for that, they cannot avail themselves to that financing, correct?
That's right. That's right. And there's some chicken and egg. So based on the state law, and this is consistent with much of the other 30 states or so that have passed it, is that you can't actually create a district or legislate the creation of that district in the jurisdiction until there's a project ready to sign on the dotted line. So, but at the same time, you want to engage that jurisdiction to make sure that they're comfortable and the wheels are in motion, because the business owner doesn't want to go too far through the process of committing to it if for whatever reason there's a holdup. And so because of that chicken and egg, that's another reason why I think that we feel like the county
Through public-private partnership that requires some agreement and it adjustment before either of them step off the bridge.
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much. And so that's again where we believe, based on experience, that the county's voice and just saying not that there's anything definitive, but that there's a level of comfort. The county and businesses therein should consider this another economic development financing tool, so that when the local jurisdictions look to the county and look to their other peers, we can have that conversation at scale instead of a number of one-off conversations, which probably become more inefficient for all of us.
Thank you.
I won't spend much time on this other than to highlight the fact that at the end of 2014, the national PACE financing market has been sized at $1 billion. So at the end of the day, what our goal is to make sure that part of that $1 billion comes to Claremont County in Southwest Ohio. And at the same time, that's a pretty strong proof of concept that real estate investment trusts, pension funds, and others are really lining up capital to invest in PACE financing. We've covered this, and so I won't spend any more time on it. It really is a very wide swath of the commercial industrial building market that this is eligible to cover. I think this is an important illustration of why this is a benefit and another tool in the toolbox. What financing gaps can PACE support that perhaps other financing tools out in the market cannot? Because at the end of the day, what we want this to be able to do is to perhaps bring some capital improvement projects sitting in Claremont County buildings off the sidelines and into the equation, and this brings more capital to the table. And so, among those benefits, you've got the right-hand column that kind of answers the pitfalls that oftentimes we see in the left-hand column. 100% financing source that comes through at a term up to 30 years at a low fixed rate. That is a product in the commercial financing market that you really can't find anywhere else, particularly for an existing building with tenants. The idea of going out and accessing 15 or 20 or 30-year capital is very unique, but that's part of what PACE enables the commercial building to consider.
On your fixed, is it a percentage plus prime, or how is it?
Yeah, what we're seeing in terms of cost of capital nationally is 5 to 7%. But again, fixed and at that long term provides a pretty unique mechanism instead of cycling up in 5 years and adjusting to market, and who knows where the market's going to be. So for those, particularly those longer term thinkers, that's where part of where it really caters to the nonprofit sector, which is more accustomed to thinking 10, 15, 20 years out. But certainly for private building owners as well, that are looking at those time horizons, that have that certain level of stability, but are overcoming deferred maintenance matters, and or just want to get right out in front of, thinking of their building as a power plant, and how can we control more of our energy costs over time. This is part of what would enable them to do that.
Okay.
It is sourced through private capital. I mentioned some of the types of investors that are out there. Part of what we work hard to do is get those private investors comfortable with investing in Southwest Ohio. And that means applying their energy underwriting standards into the deals and doing a number of things that gets them comfortable with bringing their capital to the table. And with providing business owners with options, multiple term sheets from multiple PACE investors so they can compare the options and choose the source of capital that works best for them. It transfers to the new owner, and so that can also help overcome short-term time horizons. If typically a business might only have a 5-year time horizon in a particular building, but the fact that this financing mechanism, because it's a special assessment, will stay with the property, so even if that building is sold or the tenant moves out in 5 years, that's still going to be there for the remaining, say, 15 years of the term. And so it enables an ability to be able to provide capital at a term that provides a very strong ROI and cash flow business case to make that investment up front. They don't have to worry about paying it off in a short time horizon. I alluded to multi-tenant facilities, but one of the unique benefits of PACE is that because it's passed through the tax record, a lot of times multi-tenant facilities are structured in a triple net lease situation, which already enables the passage through of increases in taxes. So the idea that a tenant can deploy PACE for $1 million to improve, a landlord can deploy PACE to improve $1 million for their tenants' spaces. It enables a more streamlined matching of the costs of that installation, i.e. passing it through to the tenants, with the benefits, because the tenants are, of course, paying less on their utility bills. Rather than have to go through some kind of massive lease renegotiation or anything like that, it again provides this uniquely streamlined mechanism there. The last one there, and as an accountant, I always stipulate and disclaim this, but there's precedent for this to be treated as off-balance sheet, which also has a litany of benefits uniquely positioned to give a building owner an ability to access capital at a low, long-term fixed rate and actually treat it not as debt, because it's a special assessment, and those are explicitly different in how they're accounted for and how they're overseen, but still with an ability to use that capital for capital improvements in the facility. So those are some of the unique elements of it that we really believe can expand the economic development financing toolbox. This we've covered for the most part, but it just gives you a sense of the capital providers that are out there. So in Ohio, there are Port Authority bond funds that have invested in PACE bonds themselves. One of the main Ohio examples being in Toledo, but is something that is an option for any Claremont County project or any project really in Ohio as a source of capital. In addition to that, there's a variety of other ways the deal can go out to market. And certainly that would be at the discretion, and we would take the guidance of the Claremont Port Authority and other decision makers from you all to determine the best way to get that deal out to market. In other words, who is that conduit bond issuer? We're confident in our ability to bring private investors to the table that would want that conduit bond issuer to lead that charge. I won't spend a lot of time on these. This just gives you a good sense for the cash flow business case for this type of financing mechanism. This is a real project in the region, an 80,000 square foot facility. At the end of the day, I think what's key on here is that the annual benefits, i.e. the energy savings, the orange bars, are, in this case, within every year except for one, year two, actually in excess of the annual cost. So the idea that, again, this is a $500,000 energy efficiency improvement. The useful life of that project is 20 years based on the equipment being installed, and this building actually has an ability to create positive cash flow based on the annual increases in taxes they're paying for the PACE assessment, because that increase in taxes is less than, and eventually significantly less than, the amount of energy savings that they're recognizing from that improvement. This is a similar example, but taking a solar photovoltaic project as well. Very feasible and very realistic to be financeable in Southwest Ohio, particularly through this long-term, low-cost sources of capital. So when I say economic development financing tool, I want to also make sure that we highlight the direct economic development benefit that we know that this work has. And so as I alluded to earlier, we've had about $42 million of energy projects come through our program, about $24 million of them. So prior to our creation of this PACE program, we did $20+ million worth of projects. So the numbers I put up here are real numbers based on the $24 million of commercial energy projects we've done historically. And so in those projects, not unlike PACE, we would request that the contractors are reporting to us the amount of hours they work on that deal, and that allows us to extrapolate and roll up what is some pretty compelling data such as this that gives any county or local jurisdiction a very clear sense for what kind of local economic development benefits happen when a building owner makes a $500,000 investment in energy efficiency or renewable energy in their facility. That ends up being, virtually 2 FTE in just that $500,000 project. So that's a pretty substantial impact. This then, our last slide, is just a lens to date for the outreach that we've done in the counties thus far. And part of the basis for us then coming to you all as we see this start to pick up some momentum, and Malink and a few others on the leading edge within the county of considering an investment in their own facility deploying PACE. And so amongst the commission meetings we've had with Commissioner Ubel and Andy, and we're here today, of course, obviously in the Economic Development Port Authority conversation, and then certainly we've also had Chuck Tilbury and I had a conversation a few weeks ago as well, because at the end of the day, with them having the responsibility they do on the tax bills, and these, hopefully sooner than later coming through to them, we wanted to just have a brief introduction session around what it is, the prospect of it coming through, and to make sure that we're doing everything we can do to make that administrative process as minimally burdensome as possible. Local government outreach, so among the buildings and the business owners that have come to us, they span to date those 3 townships within the county. And I think certainly within those and within the interest of Malink, we and Malink did present this concept at the Union Township trustee meeting back in December. We definitely are looking to them to give a kind of a formal signal of support around the concept, so that we collectively could take the advanced steps toward actually getting a project under construction, and similar conversations a little bit behind that stage in some of these other townships as well. And we'll continue to, I think, at the appropriate level, look to the county and to Andy and to others to just make sure that we're having all the right conversations, so that this is as streamlined, as simple, but as beneficial as possible to the private sector. And then in addition to that, under the business outreach, we met with our prior speaker, in fact, just this morning, to make sure that we're putting this in front of as many chamber audiences as possible. We presented at a Ready Cincinnati event out at Tata a few months back, and want to continue to find ways, and would look to you to make any recommendations you feel appropriate of how we can educate and inform both business owners, contractors, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, solar contractors in the county that might see this as an opportunity to help close more deals, and yourselves and any of your public sector colleagues that should know about this or want to help get behind this and have this be a market impact on the county.
You mentioned some projects in Cincinnati as a forerunner to this.
There's been a couple projects that have closed, and we have about in the last several months, we felt like we can really sort of open up the floodgates, so to speak, and if we do our job, they will be floodgates in terms of really developing the pipeline and nurturing more projects through. And so, this is what Chris spends a lot of his time on every day, but within Southwest Ohio, there's something in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 projects that we're actively working on in various stages, moving more and more through to the finish line.
I seem to remember a presentation similar to this at OKI's meeting maybe 2 years ago. Might that have been part of this? Do you recall? That
predates our PACE financing program, but we certainly would have been in there talking about some of the other commercial energy efficiency work we were doing at the time, as well as the residential work.
Okay.
At the same time, OKI are amongst the folks that we've been working with as we look to roll out PACE at scale in the region.
And Malink has a project that's pending, given approval of the Energy Special Improvement District in Union Township, is that right? That is correct. And where does that stand with the trustees there? Any more progress?
No more progress.
Any resistance or just no progress?
Hasn't moved off the dime yet.
Well, I'd like to congratulate the Greater Cincinnati Energy Alliance for doing some great work and blazing new trails in this area of energy efficiency and facilitating that. I also think this is a program maybe the board can get behind. We're going to discuss it, but we'd like to maybe get to a point where we can endorse and encourage it for the trustees and some of the surrounding, in the county at least, some of their trustees and some of their townships. So we'll definitely discuss it and see what we can put together.
We welcome that and appreciate the
I have a
consideration.
question on the financing part.
Yeah.
Is there a kind of a hierarchy as far as first, second position on any of the funding?
Thank you for highlighting that, actually. Ohio is what we call a lender consent state. All that is to say that the state law was written such that it requires the mortgage lender of a building to sign off on consenting to a PACE assessment becoming senior to their mortgage. And so at the end of the day, a PACE job doesn't close without that signature from the commercial mortgage holder. There is a legal document that we've already developed that gives a sense for what that consent looks like. There's also a database nationally for the amount of banks that have signed off on it in some PACE program somewhere in the marketplace, a number of whom have roots right here in Southwest Ohio.
In other words, the commercial lender will have first position.
The PACE investor will have first position, but not without the authorization from the commercial mortgage holder. And part of the business case, because this was actually one of the things that I asked about early on before we even decided that this was a strategic priority, thinking, well, why would a commercial mortgage holder sign off on it? And there's a number of reasons for it, but fundamentally, the fact that it reduces the operating cost and strengthens the positioning of the asset in the marketplace. It's a multi-tenant facility. There's a direct connection of reducing operating costs to improved EBITDA, to then improved assessed value. And so there's that direct connection to actually having that building be of a greater value in the market, meanwhile reducing the operating costs, which really strengthens it. And what commercial mortgage folks have said is that it in fact could even reduce their risk that there would be any issues or matters down the road.
Okay.
But they're brought to the table very early on to make sure that that everyone's on the same page and comfortable with it. And the commercial mortgage holder could certainly be the PACE investor as well. So if the mortgage holder wanted to buy the PACE bond via a private placement, they already know the business owner. It gives them a chance to deepen their relationship. It's a lower risk profile than the mortgage itself. There's been precedent for that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate the
Other
time.
question? Thanks for your time. Thanks
Yeah.
for
Awesome.
being with us
Thank you.
today and
Welcome.
giving us the insight into the PACE program. That's good.
And we're proud to have the link in our county too.
We definitely are.
I don't blame you.